Hey there, it's Michelle Caruana from Play Cafe Academy and Profitable Play. And today we are talking about something that every local business is all too familiar with and might just have a love-hate relationship with, and that is social media marketing. And I say love-hate relationship because sometimes social media can just feel downright overwhelming, way too time-consuming, and it can take so long and what feels like so much effort to achieve real results, right? Actual sales and customers from your social media marketing efforts. So today I asked for help from an expert. Today I'm going to be interviewing Leslie Presnall, who is a local business marketing expert and who specializes in social media marketing. And she is going to break everything down for you in a really simple and easy to understand way. We're going to talk about everything from what platform to focus on to what's most important when you go to create a piece of content to how to create content that actually engages your audience, how to get more local people to actually see and engage with your content, and most importantly, how to get actual sales and customers from your social media marketing posts and videos and overall efforts. So if you feel like you're posting and posting and posting on social media and just not quite getting the results that you want, or you feel like you're spending way too much time creating content that doesn't lead to actual customers, this guest expert interview is for you. I've linked all of Leslie's information and her podcast in the video description if you want to check that out. And if you have any questions about social media marketing for indoor playgrounds, leave them in the YouTube comments. All right, without further ado, let's talk to Leslie. Hi, Leslie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
All right, so I'm very excited for this conversation, but before we dive into the good stuff, do you want to get started by giving us a little introduction?
Yeah, sure. So I am a local marketing coach. I actually got started as a blogger. I was a blogger for 13 years, and I really just struggled mostly reaching my own local customers, local readers, and I was hosting local events, really just trying to reach people in my own local city. And that's whenever I started really taking a whole lot of online courses and realizing that there was a gap, and I had to figure out how to apply everything I was learning and figure out how to apply this to a local business. And so I started doing a whole lot of things, figuring out all these strategies and growing my audience. And other people, other local business owners started asking me, how am I doing this? How are you getting people interested in what you're doing? How are you getting people showing up at the things that you're doing? And I say I accidentally became a social media manager. Like, other business owners just started asking for my help. So then I became a social media manager. But from there, once COVID hit, everyone was kind of panicking and trying to get online, figure out social media, all of that. So then I created a online course called the Localpreneur Academy, and that's when I went more in the coaching direction, which is how I'm more of a local marketing coach now.
Awesome. And I love that you niche down even further and you primarily serve service-based local businesses. Is that correct?
Yes, I say that I work with anyone that serves a local clientele, anyone that works face to face with their customers, anybody that just has that local clientele.
Awesome. And I'm so glad that you pointed out that there is a huge gap in the market. A lot of people will watch YouTube videos and listen to podcasts and take all the courses and try to apply those same strategies to their local business. But 99% of the information out there, I think, is meant for online businesses that can serve a much greater population. And honestly, I feel like they make a lot of things a lot more complicated than they have to be for local businesses. So I'm
For
so
sure.
excited that you brought that up. So, kind of diving in to social media strategy, because that's what I'm really excited to talk about today. It's something that a lot of people who work with people face to face are wondering. So, can you talk high level first about some of the key components of a successful social media strategy for a local service based business?
Yes. Okay. So I feel like let's just start here because even the word strategy freaks out a lot of people. It sounds very scary, but strategy to me is really just the actions that you're going to take either online or offline to reach more people who live in your city. And there is no one size fits all. And that's why we can see so many people doing so many different things and it's working for them. And so I think first, I just want to say there is no perfect strategy. There's just like the actions that you want to take, the social media platforms that you want to be on, the posting frequency that feels really doable for you, the type of content that you want to be making, the content that feels easier for you to be making. I always tell people, create the content that you have the least resistance around making. Like if creating reels feels really big and scary for you, then maybe you don't jump straight into making reels. Maybe it is just a photo post that you start with just to build up that consistency. I would rather you be consistent and start there versus building out this big strategy, this massive plan that feels really big and daunting that you're going to struggle to even just keep up with. So for the strategy again, and I'm using air quotes, it really is just like, here are the actions that you are going to take consistently and choosing again the things that you feel the most comfortable with that you know you can implement over and over. I think the consistency piece is the most important part, especially on the local level. Because I think sometimes we see a lot of the trendier things that are happening or that, all these social media gurus are teaching. We see people going viral. And we think we should be doing that. We think we need to be making these big fancy reels and reaching people all over. But really, we just need to be doing things consistently and simply and making sure that people in our city are actually seeing it, which we can totally talk about how to do that. But as far as the key components of a successful social media strategy, pick your things, do it consistently, and then looking at what's working with this every week, what's not working with this every week, and then what can I just do differently to make it a little bit better next week. And then what I think a lot of people do is they will try something one time. They'll post a reel, they'll post on social media, they'll send an email, they'll try TikTok, they'll try something one time. And they're like, well, I didn't really get the result I wanted, so I'm not going to do that anymore. And so really committing to doing it long term. And instead of jumping from thing to thing, that is what typically slows people down the most. So with the strategy, consistency and commitment are really gonna trump all. But I think as far as localizing it and that really key component for the local business owner, there are a few things you can do. And I teach it's more of a concept called the local Instagram formula. If we're just going to talk about Instagram specifically, but really you could do this on whatever platform you're on. But I think it's really important that when people land on your social media platform, that they instantly know who you are and where you are. And so your city, like having that very visible, that's actually the number one common mistake that I see local business owners leaving off of their social media and their website is where they're located. So who you are, where you are, what you do, and how you help your people, and then how they can work with you. So for your people, like what type of experience they offer, maybe their hours, what it's like, having that type of stuff visible, just so people are clear on what it's like to be there.
So many good points, and I swear people are going to think that I paid you to say that because I say the consistency and commitment all the time. I see the
Perfect.
exact same thing. people, like you said, will jump from shiny object to shiny object. They won't give strategies enough time to actually work for them. So I'm so glad that you brought up consistency and commitment because I completely agree. It's so important. So, kind of taking a step back and kind of breaking down all of the components that you talked about on a little bit more of a granular level. You mentioned Instagram and some of the other platforms you alluded to. What is your recommendation in terms of social media platforms we as local businesses should focus on? And should we focus on multiple? Should we try one at a time? Can you talk a little bit about that, especially for those of us who are feeling a little overwhelmed or maybe pressed for time?
Yes. I would say first and foremost, think of who are your ideal customers and what platforms are they on the most. I looked it up right before our call here, and there are 3 billion people on Facebook. So I have a pretty good feeling that most of your people are on Facebook. And then there are 2 billion people on Instagram. So if I had to guess for your audience, most of their people are going to be on Facebook and Instagram. So those would probably be my two top recommendations right now. Um, Facebook groups right now have been working really well for local businesses, and not even saying that your people have to go start Facebook groups, but even my clients have a lot of success with being in other local Facebook groups and engaging in those groups. A lot of groups will allow certain days that other businesses can go in and promote. A lot of local moms groups like that, things that exist that they can go in and share. I would just decide what you do have the capacity for and decide how many platforms feels doable for you. I would rather you start small and master one or two before you try adding on. And so I think Facebook and Instagram is just going to be a really good place for people to start. And usually you can just kind of post the same thing on both as well. And then Google too. Google is the most used website in the world. So I think making sure your website is just optimized to be found.
Absolutely. SEO is something that is so important for my customers. So I'm glad that you brought that up as well because a lot of people don't think of it as, social media because it isn't really. However, it is part of a more holistic marketing approach. You can't, have
Yeah.
a successful marketing campaign without it. So I'm glad that you brought that up as well.
Yeah. And
So,
I'll add on too, sorry, but I'll say too that with at the local level, I think we always are thinking about social media marketing, but there are also just so many ways that we could just walk out of our homes or walk out of our businesses and get in front of people. And I always say that everyone you meet in your city has the potential to either be a customer or refer someone to you. So just thinking outside of the box, like how can I just get in front of more people? So even, things like sponsoring school events or putting your company name on sports teams jerseys or getting featured in the local media or setting up at local events or festivals or putting up signage or billboards. Just asking yourself, where are my people online and offline? And just seeing what all you can come up with.
yeah, and I think a lot of people, they get hung up on the numbers with social media specifically. And they think, oh, this video only got, 300 views or this video only got 100 views. But if those views are all local, that's 300 or 100 potential customers. And I think people really forget that because they see
Mhm.
some people getting millions and millions of views and they think that that's what they need to be successful. But I don't know if you ever talk about this, but I always tell people to visualize, picture yourself standing in a room with 300 people that are local who fit your ideal customer profile. And it really helps, especially with my mindset. When I get a video that gets 300, 400 views, if they are the right people, it can have such a big impact. And a lot of people will say, gosh, my videos don't get any views. And then I look and they have hundreds of views. And I'm like, if they're the right people, those can absolutely make a significant impact on your business. So I'm glad that you're talking about, not getting necessarily hung up on the numbers and then also thinking about those offline numbers as well.
Absolutely. I think we as local business owners have to think about, are we reaching the right people and not get caught up in the numbers games where people comparing ourselves to people who can reach and work with everyone all over the world.
Absolutely. So, kind of diving into that a little bit more, that was a great segue. So, when we are posting on Instagram, let's say that's our platform of choice, because
Mhm.
even though a lot of people are on Facebook, I think a lot of my customers just love Instagram. It's the platform they grew up on, it's what they're most comfortable with. So, just using Instagram as an example, what are some ways to make sure that the people that are viewing our content are mostly local customers?
Yes, I have a few things. This is what I teach all day, every day. So, first and foremost, I would use local hashtags. So, I would look at what other local business owners are using, see what local hashtags they're using, see if your local tourism department has a local hashtag, see what a way you can combine two. I like to think of your industry combined with your hashtag. So if I'm working with photographers, I'm like your Dallas photographer. So if there's a way for your people to combine their city with what they do. Um and then also I'm thinking I always tell my clients to localize their bios. So again, just having your city listed like first thing so people see it, because what you don't want is you don't want someone to land on your profile. You have to think of how fast people click around and consume social media too. You don't want somebody to land on your Instagram and leave so quickly just because they didn't realize that you were in their city. So I like to have your location listed at the top, especially since I know your people have physical locations. A lot of people just put the address, that, how you can put it in the clickable where people can pull it up in their maps. I see a lot of physical business owners just putting it there. I would still list that in your bio so it really jumps out at people. I would also say start following a lot of local business owners and really be part of your community. Set time aside every day or at least a couple times a week to really engage with other local accounts. I think the more time you can spend engaging with other people, leaving comments, liking other people in your posts, I mean, in your city, liking their posts, watching people's stories, engaging with their stories, even like clicking that little heart button. Everything you're doing when you're engaging on Instagram is just another way for people to see your business name. And so then ideally they're clicking on your name and they're coming back to your feed and they're seeing what you're all about. I would also use keywords in your captions. So your city is a keyword. Instagram is becoming more and more a search engine. So definitely be using those keywords that people are searching for. And I would collaborate as much as possible. Think of other businesses that are in line with you, that share your audience, and see how you can collaborate. Maybe that looks like giveaways. Maybe that looks like even partnering for an event. Just think of how can we do something together to where we're now sharing an audience.
Absolutely. And one quick question, and then I have a couple follow-up questions because
Okay.
that was really great. So, in addition to hashtags, are we also using geotags in our posts? And if so, and this is probably getting in the weeds a little bit, but honestly, I'm just curious, should we be using like our city as our geotag or our physical location or a mix of both? Or do you have a recommendation for that?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked that. I definitely use the geotag. I would mix it up. I would cycle through. So since I know your people have physical locations, definitely use your location. as much as possible, and then use your city as much as possible, like cycle through those. And then also sometimes if you're in a bigger city, especially, it might be like a certain neighborhood or area of town that you're in that also has its own geotag on Instagram. You could use that as well. So, for example, I live in Baton Rouge. So we have, you could tag your physical location, you could tag Baton Rouge, but also you may say, like, oh, I'm in mid city Baton Rouge or I'm in downtown Baton Rouge. And I would just cycle through those.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect
Yeah.
sense. And another question that I had, kind of stemming off of your previous points, you mentioned some things to include in your captions and in your bio. Do you have any other tips regarding what people should see right when they arrive at our Instagram page? So, for example, do you have any mistakes that people make when they're setting up their bio or when they're kind of curating their feed? Because something that I see a lot, I'm asking for a reason. Something that I see a lot in our industry is, I'll click over on an indoor playground's profile. Again, maybe they don't have their city listed, so it takes me a while to figure out where they're
Mhm.
from. I can't really understand exactly what they offer from their bio. And then their feed is kind of just a bunch of graphics. I can't understand what their space is like. So, can you talk about the ideal experience that when somebody arrives on your profile, it will actually entice them to follow you and hopefully do business with you?
Yes. So again, this goes back to that local Instagram formula that I just mentioned. I think again, when people land on your Instagram in your bio, it should hit those points: who you are, where you are, what you do, how you help people. So for your people, it's going to be like what that experience is like. If there's a coffee shop, if they can eat there, like what the play experience is like. And then how they can work with you. So if they need tickets, maybe it's book now, click the link below to get your tickets. Or maybe if they can host a birthday party, maybe it's see our birthday packages or book your party now, or maybe it's see our calendar of events, or whatever it is for you specifically. I would give a strong call to action there, directing them to that link in your bio. So then they can go to your website and just learn a whole lot more. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, so just to kind of make it extra clear. So when you say a
Yeah.
strong call to action, it's not just go to our website. It's something a little bit more specific.
I would be as specific as possible. What I find is people do two things. They either don't give a call to action at all, and sometimes people don't know what to do. We assume that people know how to get in their car and come to us, or we assume that people just will assume that they know how to reach out and book a party with us, but they don't. So many people will be like, oh, I never even knew they had that, or I didn't know I could just go, or I didn't know I could book a party. So that's why you have to be very clear and include something. The other thing, let's see, I said I had two things. Oh, so they either don't give a call to action at all, or they give a very vague call to action. So they'll say something like, contact me. And what I usually find is people are like, what do I do with that? I don't know how to contact you. I don't know how to get that conversation even started. And that usually just feels very big it's like a big ask for the person on the other side of the phone. And then it just becomes like, oh, I'll get around to that later. Like, I really want to book that party, but I'm just going to have to think about that for a little bit because it's just this vague, sending them to like a contact form or something. So I'm always like, how can you just make it even easier for them to take that next step? So maybe it's DM us party and we'll send you the next steps on how to set it up or something. So just thinking, how can I make it really easy for my people to get in the door or to do whatever it is that they're trying to do?
And that's great that you brought that up. So, do you recommend using a lot of automation when it comes to Instagram comments and DMs?
Yeah, I mean, if you're at that place that you feel like you can't keep up with the demand that's coming in, I recommend mini chat is a great one. It's very easy to set up, and you can set it up to where it's like if people comment a certain word like party, they'll automatically get a DM that you've written, so it's not like AI wrote it for you. It is something that you wrote and it sounds like you, just the automation part of the delivery is taken care of. But again, if you feel like it's just a couple people here and there reaching out, then maybe it's something that you just have copy and pasted in your phone and then you can send it over to them.
Awesome. So we talked about the bio. What other things should we have maybe in the form of highlights or pin posts, or what should people see other than our bio when they arrive at our Instagram profile to get, again, the most follows and the most business from Instagram?
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned the pin post. I love using all three pinned posts. Instagram lets you pin three posts to the top, and I think that's also a great place to hit those 5 points, like who you are, where you are, what you do, how people can work with you, and the next steps they need to take. So maybe you use one post it could be even, you know, saying like who you are and where you are. So maybe it's a photo or a carousel, slideshow, or even a reel, just quick little tour of your space. I think that would be a great idea. It really shows the experience of people coming in and what it's like there. Maybe another pinned post is different packages or services or menu items or whatever it may be. And then that's there. And then a third post is really optional. That can kind of be the miscellaneous post, whatever you feel like your people need to see the most. Maybe it's a testimonial, having that social proof there. Maybe if you offer any sort of, first time discount or incentive to get people on your email list, I think that's a great place to have that in the third pinned post. Really just thinking, what do my people need to see? What's a question that I get asked a lot? That's something also that you could have pinned there.
Awesome. So just to clarify, you do recommend using social media to convert people into email subscribers as well, then?
Oh, 100%.
I
Yes,
had to call that
we
out.
don't.
Some people listening feel a little resistance to that. And they, automatically think that they can skip the email list part and they can go right from follower to buyer, which happens sometimes. But, it's a lot easier than people think to grow that email list from social media. So, kind of diving into that a little bit, do you have the pin post is a great example.
Yeah.
Do you have any other examples of ways to kind of convert people into email subscribers as well from social media?
Yeah, I think stories is a great place to do that. I always tell my people, when you don't have any other idea for a story, put something up there about joining your email list and have the little link sticker. It's like when in doubt, put something up about your email list.
Absolutely, because, algorithms are a little bit fickle. One of the
Yeah.
qualms I have with social media, but email, especially if you're just having lack of inspiration or you don't want to post, it can be so much easier to just email your list. So having people in both places and staying top of mind in both places, I think is so important. So I'm
Yeah,
glad
and
that you mentioned that as well.
make it easy for yourself too. So many people don't even see Instagram post all the time. So it's whatever you're putting out there on Instagram can also just be put in your email. Like you could
Absolutely.
use the same picture and same caption, and now that becomes the body of your email too.
Yes, and something I've seen a lot of really successful clients of mine do is they have just a couple story, I want to say like templates in their phone, and they'll reuse them. I see them posting the same book a party template in their stories every couple days, just and a lot of people again also feel resistance to reusing content. So is that something that you recommend as well?
I love to reuse content. I
Good.
always tell my people, when you start annoying yourself with how much you have said something, you are just now getting on track with how many times you should be saying it. And I just think the more you can reuse and repurpose things, it just makes your life easier.
And for us with physical locations, we have a lot of things to do. Is this something that we can probably have our team help with as well?
Oh, yes, for sure. And the more you can repurpose and reuse, it makes it that much easier for someone else to do it for you.
Yes, absolutely. So I know you mentioned earlier that we should really be focusing on creating content that we feel is really easy and exciting to create, but just in general, for a physical business with, a location, what types of content ideally would we be posting? Like, let's say we don't have a preference. What type of content, be it posts, stories, a mix, videos, reels, what kind of content ideally would we be creating?
Yeah. So, as business owners in general, we all tend to get overwhelmed with all the different types of content that we could be creating. But really, there are just four different types of content. There are photos, there are graphics, there's short form video like reels, and there's long form video. And my advice would be to play around with all of them. And what I like to do is I like to have one post idea, going back to repurposing and reusing, have one idea for a post and think of how can I repurpose this across all four ways. So, for example, maybe if you're gonna promote a birthday party, uh, maybe if you're gonna talk about it, promote it in a photo, it's just a photo of the birthday party, and then here's your caption. If you're gonna put it in a graphic, maybe the graphic um, shows the different packages of the parties, things like that. If you're going to post it in a reel, maybe the reel is clips from a party, the caption can stay the same. And then, longer form video, that one may be a little different, but it could stay on the same topic. Maybe the longer form is maybe you're interviewing a parent after a party and they're talking about their experience. Maybe it's you talking about how the different packages or what having a party or anything like that. But I'm always just thinking, what's one post that I could repurpose in all these different ways? And so now I'm really just making sure I'm hitting it across the board. And you're not starting from scratch every single time.
Absolutely. And this is something I feel like people can do retroactively as well. Like if you had a great performing reel, take that reel that you posted 3 months ago, turn it into, that same concept. Clearly it was
Yes.
engaging. Maybe turn it into a photo post. Maybe
Yep.
think about turning it into a longer form video.
Yeah. I
So
think
it doesn't have
everyone,
to be something you can start now. You can kind of start recycling old content that you already have,
yes.
probably.
I think everyone should do that. Go scroll through your old Instagram post and ask yourself, how could I turn this into a graphic? How could I turn this into a reel? How could I reuse this with a different photo? And you're going to come up with so much content like that.
And that's how I like to leverage. I have a virtual assistant, and that's how I like to leverage her. I'll usually create the original piece of content. For me, it's usually a podcast or a YouTube video.
Yes.
And then she'll take that and create a blog. She'll write an email promoting it. She'll write a social media caption. So she takes my, original content and then spins it out into all these different forms. So I think a lot of people I work with get hesitant to delegate some of this, but you can still hold on to that core original piece of content and then have people kind of run with it, especially if that's something that you're not finding time to do.
Absolutely.
So, kind of on that same realm, a lot of us, are probably listening to this and getting really excited, but again, we're looking at pretty booked days. So, one thing that I really wanted to ask about is user generated content because it's gotten obviously increasingly popular. And I love that it takes a little bit of the pressure off of us business owners from always having to post all the time. So, do you have any tips or strategies on how we can leverage and encourage user generated content?
Yes, it's really simple. And it's just to ask. You have to ask your people. It's kind of like having a call to action. people don't, you will always have those people that come in and they're just excited and they want to share. That's like the 10% of people. We love those people. But for the 90% of people, you have to ask them. And so what I would do is I would have signage telling people where they can see it. And then also asking people on social media. So having it in both places, online and offline. And then thinking of how could I incentivize them to do this? So is there a freebie they could get? Or is there, a certain little discount or something they get, a little perk for sharing, or even having contests. I've worked with clients before and they'll take all the tags that they've had for a certain month and they just hype it up and make a really big deal out of it. And then at the end of the month, they choose one winner and that winner gets, a really cool prize.
So just to be clear, they're tagging the business using like their handle or the geo tag. How does that work?
Yeah, there's always going to be people that are not even going to know how to tag us for things like that. So I think do your best with trying to find, um, some people will tag you. So maybe that's another thing you do is just go check your own geo tag every so often and see if other people have tagged themselves there because you may be getting tagged and stuff and not even realize it. So that's just every so often just check that for sure. But yeah, I think for sure tell people to tag you. And if it is a contest too, people's Instagrams have to be public in order for, especially if you don't follow them, for you to be able to see their post. So if you, and this is kind of getting in the weeds a little bit with it, but what you could do is you could always set up some sort of form, like a Google form, like keep it really easy, but you could always say, hey, take a screenshot of it and post it here. That way we know you entered or something like that. Because there will be people that are like, oh, I entered, but you just never saw it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And that's probably something else that we could delegate to our team. But I love that idea of just a rolling monthly contest. Just every month we pick one winner, they get, XYZ and just constantly reminding people. I think that's such a cool idea. So thank you.
Yeah. And I wouldn't get so caught up if other people's profiles are private and you can't see it because their friends and their followers can still see it. And that's what really matters.
Right. They're the people that are going to be influenced by their
Yes.
post.
Yes.
Yeah, so that makes perfect sense. Now, what if, and again, this might be getting into the weeds a little bit, but what if we want to ask somebody to use their content? Do you have any tips around that?
Yeah. And this is going to be whatever works for you. I've seen some people, they just shoot them a DM and they ask. I've seen some people leave comments on people's posts and they just ask for permission. It's like, hey, we would love to use this post. Comment yes or comment a certain word. And that's basically them giving you permission. I would just say when you do reshare it, just tagging them, crediting them for their photos.
Awesome. And a lot of my clients, especially if they are getting ready to open or they're doing a grand opening, they'll even do like content creator days and having people come and get a special preview of the space just to shoot content. And they kind of have a little contract that allows business access to any content that is shot. So I think that's a cool idea as well. Have you
I
seen people do that?
I love that. And even I've had clients do kind of media blitz days or where they just have local influencers come in or, mom bloggers, people like that come in and give them the experience. And so it just gets a lot of people talking about you all at once, which I love. I think that's a great idea.
I think the key all at once is really important. So I'm glad that you mentioned that because, we do a lot of sneak preview days, but I think having all of the big heavy hitters in
Hmm.
one day and just making it so people cannot log onto your local social media pages without hearing about you, I think that's so cool, especially if you, again, are getting ready to open and you want to pre-book some stuff.
Yeah, and
That's
don't
really
be
cool.
afraid to reach out to local news outlets. I was in journalism for years and they need story ideas. Like you're doing them a favor, I promise. When you reach out to them, you're like, hey, I have this event happening, I have this grand opening. You are giving them content and you're making their life easier. So do not think that this is too small, this isn't a big deal, they're not going to care. You are making their life easier.
Absolutely. And I actually have a whole episode about that because I had the same
Okay.
experience. I just looked at my local business articles on our local magazines, newspapers. Their email address and contact information of people who write about local business are right there. So they're very
Yes.
easy to contact. And
Mhm.
like I said, I've never been turned down. And reaching out yourself as opposed to waiting to get hit up by their advertising department usually means organic stories and not having to pay for a spot. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that.
100%. I was always so excited when people reach out to me. I was like, yes, thank you. I don't have to think of a story idea this
Yeah, it
week.
makes their job easier. And, you have to remember that, you know, this is a business, right? You have to get eyes on it. You have to be willing to share it and put yourself out there. And
Mhm.
especially in this scenario, you're doing them a favor and you're doing your local community a favor because they might not have heard of you otherwise. So I'm glad that you mentioned don't be shy because it's something that's so important. So before we kind of wrap up, one thing that I wanted to mention, especially because we talked about this a little bit in the beginning when it comes to, consistency and commitment, what are some things that you recommend looking at in terms of metrics or performance indicators to let us know that what we're doing is working and we should be doing more of it? Or opposite, what tells us that we're doing something that maybe needs to be changed or pivoted?
Yeah, I am always looking at the result of do you have the clientele coming in that you want? And I think this goes back to sometimes we can compare ourselves as local business owners to the bigger social media people and people that can work with people all over. So we tend to get really caught up in reach and engagement and followers. And that doesn't really mean anything if we're not getting people coming in the door like we want. I've seen local business owners fall into the trap of jumping on every trendy reel, every trendy audio, going for the massive followings and putting all of their energy there. And it works. They get a whole lot of views, a whole lot of engagement, but it didn't result in local clients or local customers. So just keeping your focus on, is this actually converting into local clients and people coming in the door? And that doesn't mean that you can't have fun. It doesn't mean that you can't hop on the trends and, do the reels. And but I think too, noticing, am I doing this for engagement? Or am I being clear on what the experience of coming here is like? Am I being clear on what my offerings are? Am I being clear on how they can come in and how they can book and how they can, do all whatever it is they want to come in and do? Am I making those offers? And is that converting versus am I just getting a lot of reach, a lot of likes, and a lot of engagement? So I care more about clients, revenue, people coming in the door versus those kind of vanity metrics.
Really good points. So I know a lot of us are listening and are probably, posting. I know you gave two critical pieces of advice to be consistent and to commit to the long term, but what other advice would you give to somebody who is posting on social media but is just, again, waiting to gain traction? None of their posts are really going anywhere. What advice would you have for them?
I would say you have to fall in love with the process just as much as the result that you're working towards. And you have to commit to the process. I think so often we want some viral post that's just going to work like magic and just bring all the people in. But 99% of the time, it's not going to work like that. Your growth in the clientele really is going to come from your consistency of just showing up and being visible every day. So it takes you kind of taking your brain off of that one single post that's going to be your breakthrough or going to be the thing. And instead thinking, okay, if I'm posting 3 times a week or however many times a week, like thinking of the compound effect of that over time or over a year. And, not going to be able to do math off the top of my head, but if I'm posting 3 times a week for a year, that's what, like 150 something posts. Like just thinking of the compound effect of that over time and being committed to that over time versus like, I need this single post to work.
I think that's a really great point. I love the long-term vision. So it's really important to keep our eyes on the prize. I think that's great
Yes.
advice. So if we want to learn more about you and your courses and your podcast, can you tell us a little bit about where we can follow you?
Yeah, sure. You can find me. My website is lesliepresnall.com and my Instagram is also Leslie Presnall. I am the host of the Grow Your Local Business podcast, which is on Apple and Spotify and Amazon. And you can work with me inside the Localpreneur Academy.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your time and expertise today. It was great.
Thank you.
All right, that wraps up my conversation with Leslie. Again, I've linked all of Lindsay's information, her website, her podcast, and all of her resources in the video description. If you have a question or if there's any topic that you'd like me to cover on this channel that I haven't yet, please leave your suggestions in the YouTube comments. I appreciate them so much. All right, thank you so much for watching, Playmakers. I will see you soon. Bye for now.